What's up, fuckers? Alright, we're getting back on the Cadillac. So today we're going to start putting the wire looming on all of our wiring under the hood with the corresponding colors like we talked about in our last video. And we're also going to swap out the other battery under the hood. So let me flip this camera around and I'll show you what we're going to do. Alright, so the next step is we're going to replace the stock battery here. If you remember from when we were working on the alternator last time, we have our negative terminal loose here already. So the next step from there is to remove the positive terminal. So let's go ahead and do that. So these are just like pressure clamp type terminals, so you just have to loosen them and they come right off. So this whole box snaps on top of the battery. This holds the factory engine fuses. It's not a big deal, you can leave it all right there. In order to get the battery out, you have to take this support brace out of the way. It's super simple. There's only 3 bolts. They're all 13 millimeter. So you have one right here, you have one up here, and then you have one coming from this other brace here. So let's go ahead and get that off. Just like that. Get that out of the way. So the next thing is down right here in the middle at the bottom of the battery tray, there is a clamp that holds this battery tight to the truck. So you're going to need a long extension to get down there to it. It's pretty easy. It's right straight down in the middle. Right there, it's also a 13 millimeter. You don't have to take it completely out. You can usually loosen it up and just slide it back out of the way. It's really your preference. I usually take them all the way out of the way, so when I'm going in with the new battery, I'm not having to struggle getting that thing lined up again. I can just slap the battery in there and then put the clamp back in. It's easy as that. So now let's get that out of there. Okay, so this is what the clamp looks like. Just a solid piece of like hard plastic, kind of rubbery kind of stuff. I don't know what it is, but all it does is it pushes the battery this direction and holds it in place. 13 millimeter. Put that out of place. Now this plastic thing, like I said, it just snaps on here. I usually have to get a flathead screwdriver in here after it to get it loose. It's not a real big deal. Once you get that loose, then you just kind of take this whole assembly right here and just fold it over this way out of the way. And the battery, I usually dump it on end and pull it right over the top of this coolant reservoir. Put the new one in the same way. Simple as that. So we'll get back with you when we get that done. All right, so we have our excess power D4800 battery installed. And I'm just going to hold off putting terminals back on until I can get all the wiring reconnected. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to coating all these wires with the corresponding colored wire loom and get them reinstalled, get the lugs on the ends of them and everything like that. I'll show you how we do that. All right, so we're going to start covering our 1/0 cable with our PET braided sleeve. This is 3/4 inch. There's tons of ways to get the shielding off of this. I usually just use a razor blade. It's the easiest way for me. So you just cut it, pull the end off. If there's any loose strands, try to get them off. I usually don't have too many. Just get your lug. I try to go with the curvature of the cable itself. It just seems like it wants to lay better if you do it that way. And then stick it in our crimper here. And muscle down. Now it's very important that these are super tight, because if you have any loose connections, these will produce a lot of heat, and it'll be very detrimental to the performance of your equipment and possibly could damage it. So we got one. Let's do the other side now. I already pre-cut these just to make it a little quicker. Let's see if we get any loose ones. We got a couple there. Same thing. Let's put the lug on. Make sure you don't have any loose strands in there. Make sure they're all in there. And same thing. Into the crimper. And muscle down. There we go. Nice and tight. Okay, now that we got that, we can start with our heat shrink here, or not our heat shrink, but our braided sleeve. I buy these in spools on Amazon. It's a 100-foot spool. I put the lugs on. It just seems like it's the easiest way for me. And usually you can just push it on for a good bit. But then usually I just hold it here and let it kind of bunch up and then push it down. And just do that till you get near the end. And then I've got a little trick. When we get near the end, we get these the right length. This is not necessarily one of those things that you have to do, but I like doing it. I think it looks really neat. And you know, with these being under the hood, this braided sleeve actually gives it a little bit more protection from the heat and the elements and all that stuff. Keeps the wire looking better for longer as well. At least I think so. It's not required though. The wire itself is quite durable. It's not a requirement. It's just something that I like to do. I think it looks really good. So you just hold it and just kind of bunch it up. It's kind of like reminds me of a Chinese finger trap, one of those kids' toys you used to get for like 1,000 tickets at like the Chuck E. Cheese or something. It's kind of what it reminds me of. You just kind of bunch it up and you just run it down. And then you can see how it kind of goes down like that. And you just keep doing that till you get near the end. And then I'll kind of show you my little trick that I have that makes this where you can get it the right length and everything. You don't have extra, or you don't have to trim it too much. It's kind of a lengthy process, but it's one of the things people don't realize is when you're installing these things, sometimes the little things are the ones that take all the time. Okay. So we're going to put a heat shrink right in here. So we want this to be near the end of the cable here. So I usually get it a little ways away like this. pull the slack back this way where it's tight. And I get my cutters and I cut it right at the end of the lug that we crimped on. And then I pull this one back to where I want it to sit. Like that. As you can see, it's a little frayed, but there it is. That's how it goes on. Then we take our heat shrink. Yeah. And install it. Now, it kind of frays going on, so I'll go past and then pull it back, get it in position, get it straight with the logo on top. Heat gun. Kind of hit it on all sides. Try to keep it straight as possible. Make sure you get good shrinkage, for lack of a better way to put it, all the way around. And you might have a little bit of slack, but that's okay because we're going to pull it down to the other end. Yeah, buddy. And see, we're right where we need to be on this end too. Put another heat shrink on there. Just a little tip. You kind of want to be mindful of which direction your logo goes. I mean, if you don't care or you don't have logos on your heat shrink, not a big deal. But I like them to be right side up or facing the right direction, so when someone's looking under the hood, they're looking at the name, they're not looking at it upside down or whatever. Just little stuff like that kind of makes a big difference. I'm sure a lot of people have other ways to do this. This is just the way that I do it. I've seen people use cigarette lighters and butane torches and all kinds of stuff. This is the cleanest way to do it. It looks the best, at least in my opinion. So now we have completely coated cable. So we'll do the rest of them and we'll get them reinstalled back in the truck. Stay tuned for that. Okay, we're making some progress, folks. We've got our new charging cable for the battery in the stock location. All right. And we've got our positive off of this battery going to our fuse distro over there. We got our ground block installed down there with the ground for our second battery there. And one of the things we had to do, because we have this larger charging cable and then we have this other one coming off of there, is we had to modify this little cover here. So we had to round this off and open it up a little bit. It was just completely full right here. And then also on the back side, we had to take some off this side right here. So we can see how that fits now. It should pop right on there. Just like that. And then there's another little door that covers this up. Let's see. Nice. Yep, looks good. All right. The other thing that we did is under here, we have our ground distro front of the hood. So we're going to come off of this battery here and the one off of that battery. They're going to come around and go right in here. And then we're going to make our runs to the back off of that. Same thing here. We have our 2 positives, one from this battery, one from the other. And then we're going to come off of the back of this to the back. And that's how she's looking so far. We have a couple more wires to build. We have 2 more grounds to build. One from the engine to the battery, going through the sensor like we talked about before. And then we have one to come from the battery around down our little tray here and around to our distro. And then we need to come off of this negative of this battery here to our distro. And that should be it. I've left this disconnected so that nothing gets energized for now. I want to try to keep it as safe as possible. So once we get all that done, we ought to be in good shape when we can put the front back together and move to the back. So hang tight for some more progress, folks. All right, so we're just about finished under the hood. We're waiting on a part for that battery over there so we can finish that up, get that last ground on. But in the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and show you what we've done so far. Got our ground distro under there. Got our 2 grounds, one from the engine and one from this battery here. Fuse distro's done. All the wires have their proper coatings on them. Got our ground distro down there on the engine block, alternator, and our distro on the charging post. So we have a new charging cable for this battery, and we have a charging cable for that battery over there. And of course, just like we had to modify this piece, we had to modify this one too for this positive here. So all we're waiting on is a quad distro for the negative post of this battery, and then we can clip that factory terminal off and put a lug on there so we can connect it like the others. So until we get that, we're going to go ahead and jump to the back and get started on some of that stuff. All right, so we're in the back. Got the side panel removed. So my idea is to use this empty space here to house our smaller electronics, such as the Sparked Innovations fan controller and the Sparked Innovations 12 volt fuse circuit block, whatever it's called. So we're gonna put those there. So I was trying to figure out how I wanted to mount this, since there is a lot of empty voids and such. The jack's missing, so I figured I could use this area here where the jack was. So I built a small panel out of some plastic that bolts in the area where the jack access is. So if you pull this off, there's the 2 components in there. So we have room for the wires to go down or up on both components. And it'll be nicely tucked out of the way. Easy to get to, easy to change the fuses out if you need to. So we'll get some wiring done back here and get our 1/0 run up through the floor. I believe I've got a spot located for that. I think we can come up through this area here. Originally we were going to run 2 grounds and 2 positives, but we decided not to put the battery underneath the back. We're only going to use the 2 in the front. So we're going to have 1 run of positive and 1 run for the ground. So we'll have those coming up through there through some waterproof grommets, and it should sit nicely out of the way for our panel that we just made. So once we get all that done, we can button this back up, and then we can start building the platform back here. So hang tight and we'll start getting that done. What's up, y'all? Back here in the back of the Escalade, we've got our 4 gauge tied up there with the factory harness. It's going to go to our main power and ground distro that's going to be right over here. the other end is going to tie in to this Sparked Innovations fuse distribution here. That's going to be used to run our fans, our fanny controller, and all of our LED lights and everything. So from there, we've got our remotes, ran one from the front and one to the center here where all of our amplifiers and our audio controlled DM608 is going to be. Also, this is where we're going to come up through the floor with our power and ground from the front, from under the hood. We're going to go through these waterproof grommets. You can get these at Sky High Car Audio. It's got a nice little rubber gasket here that tightens up real nice against the 1/0 coming through the floor. Keeps any fumes and water and dirt and dust and crap from coming in. So I chose this location right here because this section right here behind here is where all of your fuel lines for your filler, for your tank and the breather and some of the other things, they're all right here. So you don't really want to drill through the floor right here. So we scoot over to this section. It's completely empty underneath. I used this bolt right here for reference, and then there's another one. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right back there. So using those two bolts for reference, it was pretty easy to go under there and figure out where we wanted to come through. So we're gonna come through right here. It's pretty far away from everything, so we don't have to worry about anything. But anyway, that's gonna wrap up this video. On the next video, we're going to dedicate an entire build series just for this section here. We're gonna build this a platform that's gonna hide all the wiring and the fuse and ground distribution. Our amplifiers are gonna be on display here. And then of course we're gonna have a spot for the speaker box to mount to there. But for now, that's gonna wrap up this one. Stick with us, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace.